Don't say I didn't warn you.
All right, greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the episodic discussion. Today we will be talking about paranormal and ghost media. So everything involving that, maybe some ghost encounters in real life. Do we believe in ghosts? All of that good stuff on this podcast tonight. So I'm your host, Renegade Operative, and I'd like to introduce my panel. So first we have Zamzar.
How's it going? Happy to be here.
It's going great. Tomorrow's Halloween, the best day of the year, the best day of this month so far. Next up is Max.
Oh, my name is Max, also Electro, and thanks for having me on to talk about ghosts. And yeah, Halloween definitely is one of my favorite times of the year, and it broke my heart when I already saw Christmas stuff out today at Walmart. It made me cry a little bit, not gonna lie.
Just get the shotgun, you'll be fine.
I wanted to. It was like, no, let me have this month. Damn it.
Next up, we have Hart.
Hello, everyone.
And we're gonna get right into the questions here. So excuse me as I am all disheveled. I'm gonna try to pull up the doc. Just give me a second. Oh my god.
I can read it off if you like.
Sure, yes, please. That'd be great.
All right, for our first question, and I don't know who wants to take it first. Since this is a podcast about paranormal and ghost discussions, then let's start off simple. Do you believe in the paranormal or not? Explain your reasoning. Okay. For me, I need to keep this on. I don't know what you want to call it word for it. So I am a Bible believing Christian, and in the Bible it does talk a lot about there being different kind of ghosts, different kind of demons. Like, this is something that threw me off a little bit. I'll admit, when we were starting this, is like, we are not talking about demons. We were talking about ghosts specifically. And yeah, in the Bible, it does talk about that a lot, and those that would talk to ghosts and stuff. So for me personally, do I believe in the paranormal? 100%. Yes, I do. Now, does that mean I believe it in the same way as you see it in a lot of media? Not necessarily, nor will I pretend to have the most experience in it. But yes, I would say those things are entirely possible. It's just something that's someone joined in. Something that is very specifically, the way I always heard it described was it was as if a third dimensional person was talking to a two-dimensional person. So it's something that's very hard to grasp onto. But yes, overall. I believe Ren might be muted right now. So hello, what about you?
Yeah, I do believe in the paranormal. A majority of my belief is in the fact that I'm a pagan, and it kind of comes with the territory of believing in the spiritual world. Yeah, I've had different experiences throughout my life, and I've always been like thoroughly immersed in supernatural media, just because it's always been kind of what gets me going. As far as getting excited for different things, because I really like lore and whatnot, and there's a lot of great lore in horror.
Hold on, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, for some reason Discord is being weird, but Yeats, since you're here, introduce yourself, good sir.
Hello, I am Yeet. Joined the server a couple months ago, and this is my first podcast, and I'm a huge fan of the paranormal. I actually recently have been into ghost hunters, so
Well, we're gonna
talk about that later.
So we're gonna start off with the first question that we have in the doc, and that's basically, do you believe in like paranormal figures in general, ghosts, all that stuff?
Supernaturally, ghosts specifically, not really. I believe that there's stuff out there, but ghosts in particular, no. So if somebody came up to me and said, hey, ghosts are actually real, and proved it, then I would believe them. But right now, until there's further evidence to suggest that ghosts are a definitive thing, then no.
All right, that's a fair answer. Samzara, did you go yet?
I did not.
Okay.
I would say that I would consider myself a skeptic. If there was some sort of evidence to indicate that ghosts or the paranormal exist,
I would believe that, but in real life, no. But I do think it is an entertaining concept. I think it's a comforting concept for some people to have that idea that, you know, there might be something after, and if we could, you know, have some sort of interaction with the afterlife via ghosts or other paranormal occurrences, that helps substantiate, you know, further things beyond this life. But I do not personally believe in that. I haven't seen any evidence for that. Not to say I haven't had some strange occurrences that are pretty unexplainable or odd, but nothing that has pushed the scale or tipped the scale in the favor of ghosts existing. But as a concept, I think it's fun and entertaining to play around with.
Yeah, my reply is going to be the same as Zamzara. Now, it's a little bit different though. I do believe that maybe it might be something beyond afterlife or all that stuff, because I mean, you know, I am a little bit spiritual in a sense, so I do think that maybe there could be something out there, but I also am a realist, so I'm like, until I get like an actual encounter of something in front of me, I usually don't tend to believe it, because it's a lot of, you know, hocus pocus bullshit out there, and a lot of stuff out there put in media that is highly exaggerated at times. But you know, there's questions that I'm going to answer that I probably wouldn't do if given the opportunity, and I think people probably know what they are, but still, it's a fascinating concept, and it's fun to play with and see what everyone thinks and what they could do in media about it. There's a lot of entertaining media out there about horror, ghosts, and paranormal in general, but I need to see those sightings to actually believe it myself. So, did everyone go on this question before we move on to question number 2?
So you're saying you three will believe once Hollow summons one and I exercise it, right? Then we're all on board. We're all on board on the same page there.
I would believe
Yeah,
it.
get the Ouija
Holly,
board.
get your pagan bullshit going. Let's rock.
Get
But
the,
if you put it on tape, I wouldn't believe you. But if I saw it in person, I would. Because there's so
you're
much
no
editing
fun.
crap you could have done to make me not believe it.
What if I get a really shitty camera and I like shake it the whole time?
Oh,
so
no,
it looks,
no.
So it looks like live footage. Then will you believe me?
No, that's make it worse. Then I would
Hollow,
believe
this is
it's
a
all-
ripoff. What in the world?
So we're moving on to question number 2, and that is, have you encountered a paranormal event in your life or anything remotely similar? Describe what transpired. So Max, I want you to go first.
It's because I called out Hollow. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm kidding with you, man. But so for me, there's been a few times in my life where it's like, ooh, I feel like something's watching me, or maybe you hear a voice. But I feel like everyone goes through that kind of a thing, so I don't really want to count that. The closest one I've had to a real one, though, is so I served in the U.S. Navy for about 4 years. I was in Yokosuka, Japan, which is right in the middle of like the bell curve of it. And I worked as an IT guy. I talked to submarines. On base there is actually a famous tunnel, and I didn't know about this until after the fact. I found a few names for it. I might be saying it wrong. Some people call it just the I always feel like I'm pronouncing Yokosuka wrong, even though I was there for however many years. But Yokosuka base tunnel, some call it the Grisly tunnel or just the haunted one itself. And the story goes that there was a samurai that went through there as part of a mission. I forget exactly what it is. And he was assassinated before he could get there. And sometimes you can still see him. Now, obviously, this is like unsubstantiated. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a bunch of drunk squids that just went through and thought they saw something. It wasn't real. But for me, I forget. I want to say I was making sure one of my shipmates was getting, it always sounds like I say shitmates. I was making sure a friend of mine was like getting home after a night of drinking. And I remember walking through that tunnel and very distinctly feeling like something was following me. And like, it's a tight tunnel, so I was hugging the wall. And I looked back and I saw a shape, and it was one of those things that once you actually looked at it, it went away. And I was like, oh, well, I've had a few drinks too. Then it happened on the way back. And then later on, I went through there a few more times, and each time I felt like some kind of presence, something following me. Every now and then, like, you know, it was probably just the wind, but I kept seeing a figure behind me. going through there. Nothing malicious, nothing like hearing voices to kill my family or anything like that. But yeah, definitely witnessed a few things there. It kind of creeped me out and made me not want to go through there for like, I think that was like 2 years into my deployment there. And I remember like a good 6 months to a year, like I would just avoid that tunnel like the plague because it creeped me out so much. But it wasn't anything like extremely visible or like in the movies or anything. It was just like a glance, a small flash of something. But yeah, I would say that is the closest experience that I have had personally.
All right, so it is the turn of Hollow Heart. What do you think about this question?
I have encountered some things throughout my life. I'm trying to think of like an exact moment because I've had actually a lot of different things happen. Of course, it's never been, anything flying across the room kind of stuff. It's always just been feelings, and I know the feelings can always be, debunked to other things, but trying to think of where I was because it was super. Oh, it was when I was with I went ghost hunting with some friends because we used to do that from time to time, just like run around to known haunted cemeteries here in the Midwest and kind of, check things out. And we were at one where, the story was that there were, children who hung out, deceased children who hung out in the trees and would, watch, from the trees. And while I do believe in ghosts, I don't necessarily believe that ghosts take the form of humanoids that used to roam the planet. So, like, I wouldn't really put it as that it was the children, but I definitely felt something within the woods itself watching out. And it was definitely enough to make the hair on the back of my neck crawl, which doesn't happen too often.
Zamzar, what about you, buddy?
I've had experiences similar to Hollow, and where we would do ghost hunting around places that there were urban legends, like local urban legends. This road is haunted, this cemetery is haunted, this park is haunted, and we would go out to these places, after midnight and sit in them, or just watch and kind of gauge a feeling of the area. And we would hear things, see things, but nothing that couldn't be explained by an animal or even somebody else being around. There was one time where we were at a haunted cemetery, and going in there was nothing on the road, nothing out of the ordinary, but leaving there was a dead deer in the road that just appeared, and this was like a dead end road. There was only one way in and one way out, so we would have seen it if we had come there. There was nobody that had driven down that road that we heard. We did this stuff late at night. We would hear cars moving. Not sure how that got there. That was made us a little uneasy. And there was a nearby haunted park that we sat in, and we would see these kind of what we described as best in our, these are teenage years. So as a teenager, the best we could describe it were glowing eyes. But that could easily be explained by animals looking out of the forest line. But the most, I guess the spookiest one that I can't really explain is a bit of a longer story, but I'll try and summarize as best I can. My mom had a friend when I was in high school, and she had two daughters, and one was older, getting married, and one was younger, still in, I think, middle school or late middle school, early high school. And she was waiting for the bus one morning, and tragically somebody hit her with the car, and she passed away. But she was very excited about going to her older sister's wedding, and she had her outfit picked out and everything, and she had these very specific shoes that she was excited to wear to the wedding. So she, like I said, she got hit, got taken to the hospital, didn't make it. They took her off life support, and she passed away. And the wedding, this happened maybe in the fall or winter, and the wedding wasn't until the following summer. And then that following summer, they have the wedding, and this was back before digital photography. Photographers had to come in, take pictures, develop them. You had to get them back. And when they got the pictures back, there were some group photos that had people lined up taking, typical wedding group photos. and there were a pair of kids' legs wearing those specific shoes in the photos. And it wasn't like she was like a bridesmaid or a flower girl that like anybody else would have been wearing those shoes. And it was just the feet. There was no body attached to it that you could see. There was no real shadow to it, so you couldn't really tell where it was coming from. And they asked around, like, hey, they were like, did anybody have a kid wearing these shoes at our wedding? And nobody knew where it came from. So the only explanation is like, oh, well, that was her spirit there, in spirit at the wedding. And there was never any explanation to it. So that's like the closest thing to a ghost encounter I've had that was kind of unexplainable. And we really never got any answer to. So, yeah, that was definitely something that stuck with me and kind of pushes the scales into believing, but not quite all the way.
Yeats, it is your turn. Have you had any paranormal encounters so far?
Good question. Like big ones?
It could be big, small scale, any of the above.
I think I've had actually a lot of small ones. One that comes to mind is I was going on a bus one time. We were going around our neighborhood because I was going to get some lunch, and then we go by this house. I walk by it sometimes, and it's normally just a nice house. And this particular time, the windows were wide open. So as we're driving by, I see this. You can see it's a weird window because you can see like all the way inside. So when I'm looking out the window, all I see all of a sudden is just this doll that's moving around, or not moving around, but just like at the window still, like that's just there. That just like appears. I don't know how it just comes up to the window. There's nothing there before, and then all of a sudden there's this doll, but there's nobody in the back. There's no. It's not even look like it was thrown or anything. It's just like because it's perfectly like upright, like it was made like one of the. Have you ever seen like Annabelle is sitting upright like that? And it just appears out of nowhere, and I'm just like, what the fuck? But it was nothing. It was just creepy as shit to me. Other times maybe it was like when I was walking alone one time at night towards a paint store that is up my street, and when I'm walking home with the paint, I just said, you ever seen like those movies where it's like where the wind blows to signify that like something's about to happen, kind of some final destination type thing, or just it felt like that, but like nothing actually happened, but it was just like I had this feeling that something was watching me. And then there was something that creeped me out the next morning was actually a tree fell down after a storm hit. But I didn't look at the weather beforehand, so that kind of shocked me. Any other time? I mean, not all of these are like 1-to-1 because my memory is kind of fuzzy, but
You have any more?
I'm trying. Actually, yeah, there was. They actually never on. This one's actually pretty good. Is that was staying at a hotel one time after going to a haunted attraction to go to a hotel, and I go to the elevator, and I press the down button, and once I'm almost to the bottom, it stops for like a second. I'm scared the crap out of my mind because I feel like something happened. But nothing. I was actually wrong. It just went down. The thing is, the reason that creeps me out so much is because there was a hotel there was a hotel that was next to it that actually had somebody die in it. So that made me think I was gonna die. I mean, the other person died in the hotel elevator, and that creeped the shit out of me. And that made me think like maybe the fucking ghost went over to this one, just trying to kill me or something. I mean, in hindsight, it was probably just weird coincidence, but yeah.
Okay. I can go next then, and we can move on to the next question. So I have a few. I'll start with the obvious one. First and foremost, I do not sleep like anywhere near my roommate, so I mostly sleep by myself. And there was one occurrence, it actually still happens, where I wake up with scratches on my back, and I don't know where they came from. I don't know how they got there. I know it's not a case of like bed sores or anything like that, because there are long fingernail scratches always on my back each and every single night. So that's one super creepy thing that has happened. Another is there was a hotel I went to where clearly one of the tenants, or the previous tenants, basically killed themselves with a shotgun. So when I was sleeping in their particular room where it happened, there would be instances where the TV would turn on randomly. I remember this too. Like it always happens at 12 midnight. The TV just cuts on, and then the news starts playing. And then I'm like, what the fuck? I don't watch the TV. Why is the TV on? So I had to ask the landlord, why is this the case? And I heard that the tenant who died was really into the 12 o'clock news, always watched it. That was one of her favorite national pastimes. And I was thinking to myself, that's really weird. I shouldn't be in here anymore. I'm going to get out of this place as soon as possible that following Sunday, and I did. There's another story where I was with my best friend and I fell over, and it felt like something pushed me, but I don't know what it was. And then someone started laughing. I thought to myself it was him, but I know his voice and it's very distinct. And I'm like, he doesn't sound that deep. So what is this laughing? Who is that? And so I looked at him. I didn't say anything because I thought if I did, or if I told him, he'd probably think I was crazy. So I kept it to myself. But that was one thing that happened. And then I think the last thing that happened that was really on the nose was there was a point where I was really bad in school. I was cutting up. And I remember I got suspended. So I was in my brother's room one day. He was playing Shenmue on the Dreamcast. And I went in there and I sat down on the bed. And then I heard my name. I know he's like right next to me. It's not his voice again. So I'm like, are you calling me or something? He's like, no. Then I hear it again. Then I hear it a third time. So I kind of went to the bathroom and I recomposed myself a little bit, wondering if I'm going crazy. I made some self-apologies if I was bad in school. I was really freaking out. And then when I went back to sit in that same room, it all went away. So those are the 4 stories that I had that was really, really fucking weird and really, really fucking strange. Now we're gonna move on to the next one. What makes the ideas of ghosts scary in your opinion? I want Max to start this off.
You sure it's not your cats or anything going
No,
on?
I my cats are 100% always downstairs. I never keep my cats in my room at all.
That's still happening to you?
Yeah.
Burn the house down. No, just don't. Jeez, that's creepy. I'd be freaking out a lot more about that. But so for the question of what makes the idea of ghosts scary in your opinion, for me it's twofold, and I have to tell a little bit of a story for it. So this was a while ago when Stranger Things first came out. I was watching it with my family, so it was me, my dad, my mom, my sister, and my wife, and we were just talking, and I would say this is spoilers, but this is like in the first season, so it's not really a spoiler. When they're at the facility that Eleven was in, and they were like, there's security guards, they're like trying to train the children. It's all about them being like psychics, essentially. Like, we are going to experiment on these children to make them psychics and make them effectively weapons. And what really struck us, like, this is specifically me and my dad talking, we were like, do you know how much it would absolutely suck to be a guard there? because the only chance you have against one of these psychic children when they go nuts is if you can take them down without them knowing that you're there. You're really only a guard for things coming in, because your armor won't help, your weapon won't help, nothing you have will help. They will just psychically grab your brainstem, grab your neck, grab your eyeballs, and just destroy it. And lo and behold, in the show, that's kind of what happens. To remove spoilers and not to describe anything. And I think that aspect of ghosts is one of the reasons that they are so effective as like either a storytelling element or a villain or an enemy. They effectively don't operate on any rules. Like I mentioned before, it's like a third dimensional creature, conversing with the second one. The ability to move through walls, the ability that they're just fully intangible, that they can take your memories, that they can like move the environment around, that they can change your emotions, change the atmosphere. That Pokemon is obviously a bit of a silly example, but like going down the line for all those different kinds of ghosts, all of the like possession, like some kind of skill or muscle that humans have to like fight off that theoretically that no one can ever train, because it's not something we deal with. It is something that you are truly and completely defenseless against, which I think makes them like really unique, because once you go up against one, like in all the different shows and stuff, you have nothing. And depending on like the type of show, we'll talk more about those later, people try to run, people try to fight back, people try to find the source, people try to appease, and it just doesn't work unless you learn the ghost's rules and play by its rules. And there's like different mythologies, like in Japanese mythology, if you ever wonder why, once again referencing Pokemon, if you ever wonder why a lot of like dockside bridges are always at right angles, there's some mythology that ghosts have a real hard time turning. It's stuff like that is just really fascinating as a concept, and especially because it involves human life, which goes to my second point. It's universal around mythologies. The second point that I think makes them so interesting, so scary, is it forces you, we've mentioned this a little bit before, it forces you to confront the possibility of an afterlife. If you're a Christian, it's a demon. If you're a pagan, it's who knows what kind of spirit or one kind of malicious entity. Like if you don't believe there's anything, it's the void. What kind of emotional or spiritual force is keeping this thing here? There's so many different angles and so many different ways you can go about it. Like, can you use my Ouija board to talk to my family and to speak to those that you have lost that you would love to talk to again? Is this some creature that's just following some pattern that was so hard set by a person that it just keeps happening for whatever reason? Is this something that's going to, like, oh, it's a person that used to live in the house, so now it throws furniture because it's mad that someone else lives in here? There's so many different angles of really forcing you to confront what happens after you die. And I think that's what makes it really fascinating, because in day-to-day life, it's really easy not to think about it. Hey, no matter what I believe or no matter what I think it is, when I die, I'll figure it out when I get there. But seeing a ghost is like, oh, something's up. Does it prove anything? We don't know. And I think those two ideas of being defenseless and having to confront that concept of an afterlife is just what makes them so interesting and so immediately unnerving.
Zanzar, it's your turn.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Max on a lot of that, where it's just a really cool storytelling device, because it's the fear of the unknown after death. It's the idea that there may be some way where you get stuck between life and death, still on this earth, but not fully on this earth. And just all the different lore that goes into that from different cultures and all the different angles you can take on that, like Max was talking about. And yeah, it's just, there's so many different storytelling, like, overcoming, utilizing ghosts to overcome, struggles. We see it in film all the time. And yeah, it's just that idea that these things can interact with us on some level, but we can't really interact with them. I think Hollow was mentioning it's the kind of or either Yeet or Hollow or Max, I forget who was talking about it, but like the idea that it's like a three-dimensional creature trying to, or being, entity, whatever you want to call it, trying to communicate with a two-dimensional creature, or like if you want to go Slaughterhouse 5 with it, like fourth dimensional trying to interact with third dimensional, like they can interact with us, but we can't interact with them because our minds just can't comprehend it. It's pretty cool storytelling device in any multiple amount of mediums.
All right, Hollow Heart, it is your turn. Do you find ghosts scary?
Uh, so I don't find the idea of spirits in real life to be scary. Uh, Even though I do believe in them, I just it's too long of a discussion for me to get into right now. But sticking with the whole idea on media, I think one thing that really drives home and makes ghosts scary is really the whole concept with, and it's a trope that's used a lot now, where ghosts are the basically messengers of you done fucked up. You did something wrong. You thought you could escape from it. You thought you could run away, but the ghosts are the one that holds you to that wrongdoing that you did. And it's kind of, it's a little, kind of, don't do this kind of ghost story thing, but it's, it's along the trope of, you can't run away from these things and whatnot. And holding yourself accountable, honestly, for humans is one of the scariest thing a human could do. And that's where I find a lot of the fear in it, is just the fear and the truth that at the end of the day, you're going to have to hold yourself accountable against the unknown.
What about you, Yeet? Yeet, you there?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think that like what point to talk about that. The other two have gone over, and I think one thing for me personally that I feel like Ghost is making Ghost really scary is how in a kind of not a lot of stories, but in a couple stories it's used as like a loved one, and how can because for you guys you've talked about how I forget who specifically, but it was talked about how the idea of an afterlife, but I lean more towards like not even exactly afterlife, the fact that there's like people that interact with you. Well, yeah, you talked about the 2D plane, but the fact that people can interact with you in a non-conventional way, like the fact you can go up to somebody today and say, "Hey, hi," and you're just two normal human beings, but the next thing you know, all of a sudden they go through a wall. Is it scary? But it's also the fact that like you have ghosts that are like Casper, Ghostbusters, where they're like obviously ghosts. Then you have ghosts which are more human-like, but the only difference is that they can go through walls, but they all look all normal, which I think is even more terrifying because it's so similar, yet there's a striking difference between you and it, and that makes you question about yourself. And are you a ghost, or are you real? And this is all like very technical stuff, and there's obviously like a big difference between a crazy ghost like Casper versus something that's similar to you. But my point is that like ghosts can be very familiar, which I think hits a home a lot more than like demons sometimes. Even though demons can be classified as a ghost, it's just that ghosts can be what can separate ghosts from humans is just very thin line at times, and I think that is what scary the most, because I think a lot of people don't want to become ghosts, but the fact that the line can be so thin and that you could just die and become one is while morbid, is a very scary topic.
Yeah, my opinion on this is pretty much similar to everyone else. I'm just, it's not also like I am not scared of them, because I am, like, I'm pretty much a big chicken about a lot of stuff, but it sort of dwells on that fear of the unknown. Like, what is this thing? Where does it come from? If I encounter it, like, what's calling to me? Am I hallucinating? It's a lot of factors that come into fruition when you ask questions about things you don't know about, or things you're not supposed to be messing with. And I wouldn't be in any like highly resonant ghost areas at all. If I have the forethought, I would avoid it because it's just natural. It comes with the territory of trying to not only protect my sanity but to protect myself. So I do believe there is higher powers and afterlives and all that stuff, but in terms of like just avoiding it if I can, and minding my business and going about my ways, that's what I would do. There are definitely scary thoughts when you consider it, especially when you think of death, and everyone's like scared of dying and scared of losing like loved ones, and hopefully spiritually the person is strong, and that you want to make sure everyone's in a good place and stuff like that. So it's a lot to think about on that premise. It's like very easy for people to live just being carefree as much as possible, which is probably the best way to go about it. But in my personal opinion, I think it is definitely creepy. I will stay away from it as much as possible, and hopefully, I don't have any more encounters like that again outside of the back stuff, which is very weird, but it's just something to think about at the end of the day. So we're gonna continue on to the movies, favorite ghost movies and stuff like that. So this is a top 3 favorite paranormal movies. I'm gonna go really quickly on this one before I let everyone else go. So I just want to say The Shining, great movie by Kubrick. I loved it. Just the idea of the ghost communicating to the boy, and the boy having all these thoughts of the people in the motel, the red rum scene, murder on the wall, and then you see it on the mirror. It's very riveting and creepy. Jack Nicholson, fantastic in that movie as he slowly started to become crazy. Like the paranormal thing is like a secondary sort of thing in that movie, but the real crux is how this man's mental state just deteriorated because of this place, and they get stuck there, and it gets even crazier when you have like a serial killer and a mother trying to protect her child. I thought that was a great movie, great premise, great setup, great characters. The Ring, it's a simple answer. I haven't seen any of the Ju-on movies, but I have seen that 2000 Ring movie, and I enjoyed that interpretation of the Ring. Those people, being on borrowed time and stuff like that, and trying to do their best to survive. I would say Grudge also as well. Like all of that stuff when they did their adaptations in the early 2000s were good. And I think Oculus was another movie that I seen that was really great. Mike Flanagan always bending the minds, and you don't know what's going on with this mirror, but apparently there's a lot of murders in this house, and it's all connected to that one setup. And then you see at the end, it's like, once again, people are driven by madness, parallel scenes, and because of all the stuff that happens in the mirror, people don't believe the guy at the end. A lot of people thought that was a melancholy shock value gut punch, but in my honest opinion, I think that was the only way it was going to go, because the thing about depravity and thoughts of the mind dwindling down is anyone going to believe me after this super paranormal event? And the answer in that movie is no. So I kind of like how that was executed a little bit, but I can see the other side saying, I wish this guy would have got out and the truth would have been told and everything like that. But overall, I enjoyed all those 3 films. I thought they were fantastic. So I'm going to move on to Zamzara.
Yeah. So I was looking at my list of 3 movies here that I want to talk about, and I seem to have found the running theme in all of these movies is ghosts are trying to help people. So first, I had obviously The Sixth Sense had a big impact on me. It was one of the first movies I had seen in theaters. It came out when I was, I think, 11 years old. Went and saw that in theaters with both of my parents, and I couldn't sleep for a week. It really messed with me. So there were like especially the one scene that sticks with me is in the school, and they have the three bodies hanging by nooses in the stairwell, and that really stuck with me. And the other one was the person on the bike that he sees. Those scenes for some reason stick out in my head. But I don't need to talk about Sixth Sense anymore. I think everybody's probably seen that at this point. The other movie that I like that's a ghost movie is Stir of Echoes. If anybody has seen that, that is a Kevin Bacon movie where him and his family move into a house, and they're in this house, and it had been renovated, and he bought it from, I don't know if it was a neighbor or brother-in-law. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but her sister, his wife's sister, his sister-in-law, does a hypnosis on him and kind of unlocks his mind to be able to interact with the other worlds, paranormal realms, and he starts getting communications from a ghost, and it's trying to lead him on this journey, and it's basically him trying to figure out what's going on and why this ghost is trying to communicate with him, but everybody around him just thinks he's going insane. But that's a very good movie. If you haven't seen Stir of Echoes, I would highly recommend it. And the last one is The Frighteners. It's a Peter Jackson movie before he did Lord of the Rings, that stars Michael J. Fox, and it's about Michael J. Fox, who is a paranormal investigator, but he can actually see ghosts. He experiences near death. He has a near death experience, so he can see ghosts, and he basically recruits these ghosts to go into homes and cause mayhem, and then he comes out and clears the paranormal activity. But this spirals out of control, and it leads him on an adventure where he thinks death is following him around and killing people around him, and it just kind of spirals from there. But Peter Jackson flair, kind of over the top, comedic, but still horror. If you've seen Brain Dead, aka Dead Alive, it's kind of the same thing, not quite as gross and gory, but that same kind of campy tone. So those are my three. I would like to give honorable mentions to Grave Encounters 1 and 2. I just watched those recently for the first time, and I thought they were really well done movies for being low budget horror movies. They're found footage movies, and it's about like these ghost hunters that go lock themselves in an asylum, and just strange shit starts happening. But they're like the Ghost Adventure guys or the Ghost Hunter type people that are on Discovery and all those channels. But great movies, but those are probably, like I said, my top three and a couple honorable mentions.
All right, Max, it is your turn. Top three favorite ghost movies.
So for me making my list, I felt kind of bad because we mentioned a little bit before that like a lot of ghost stuff is kind of like tied with demon stuff. I'm not gonna pretend, like I kind of joked about it. I am not as well educated in this department as I should be, probably because I don't like crying myself to sleep at night. You know, I like pretending to sleep well, but I had to remove like what's specifically demon, what's specifically ghost. And for me, I would like to echo Oculus was probably one of the scariest movies I ever watched in my life. And I know there's probably a bunch of people out there that are like, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it's just gore and brr, brr, brr. But what I absolutely loved about Oculus was the mind games it played, how it opened up this premise of like, yes, there's this mirror, it does stuff, it houses souls, it makes people forget to eat, it makes people do things without realizing, it makes time move in different ways, it defends itself. Sidebar, I never understood in the movie why someone didn't just from as long range as possible with a sniper rifle start shooting at the mirror, but the kids had a plan, and I like that they actively tried to kill it, the mirror itself, even if I didn't agree with how they did it, and the mirror defended itself. It summoned things, it screwed with their minds, and it was just this really well done and creepy movie. And at the end of it, where it shows like, look, here's all the victims, including, and I won't spoil, but was it a gut punch, but it was an incredibly effective gut punch. That movie scared the crap out of me. The other one was this is probably one that's unsurprising to everyone, is The Grudge, also known as Ju-on. I watched the I believe it is the American remake of it that came out in 2004. We'll talk about it a little bit later when we talk about ghost villains. And as much as I mentioned earlier that like, oh, ghosts are really interesting because they don't truly operate off of any kind of rules. The Grudge and I forget the name of the actual girl's self. If it is Juan, someone can correct me on that. But I really liked how she was able to like break rules. She didn't really operate off of anything. It was just constantly like harassing people, following people, doing more and more messed up things. But I really liked it when she did operate off of like, oh, this horrible thing happened, and as a result, these horrible occurrences that happened in my family that caused me to die and be in this anguish, they're repeating. The patterns, I think, are what made that movie so interesting to me. I need to watch the other ones. I know eventually there's like The Grudge versus Ringu or whatever it's called, which sounds hilarious to me. But I really did enjoy that first one, especially the iconic going down the stairs at different frame rates, the child that showed up out of nowhere, the girl who lost a jawbone, and you just find this bloody piece of meat, and you're just like, what in the world is this? And then later on, you find the girl and her tongue's hanging out. I think it was very well done, and I really enjoyed it. And the last one I'm going to say is a little bit of a twofer, and this is for sillier reasons, but it kind of occurred to me while we were talking about it. Ghostbusters and Danny Phantom. Yes, they are not necessarily horror films. This is more tongue-in-cheek comedy. Danny Phantom is, it's a Nickelodeon show. But I do think they kind of have a lot of fun with the idea of ghosts, even if a lot of it ends up being, this is basically just magic of people shooting lasers and stuff. But, like, it's fun, it's happy, and it shows a more comedic air to it. And sometimes, especially in Ghostbusters, like, regardless of whichever one you pick, they have some really genuinely creepy moments. I'm blanking on his name. The villain from the second one, who is based on the painting, is really a truly terrifying kind of villain. So I definitely want to mention those movies and shows. Like, they're a great time, even if it's not truly trying to make you pee your bed at night kind of a horror like we've been talking about with the other movies.
Hello, Hart. It is your turn. Top 3 favorite horror movies. Go in terms of ghost.
Okay, so my first one is actually going to be a double, and it's going to be the Grave Encounters movies because it was kind of honorably mentioned, and now I have to talk about it. So the Grave Encounters movies really go together to me because the first one tells the story, the second one finishes the story. But they do a really great job on telling the story from the genre of the like old asylum ghost stories. And I have to say, I think one of the things that really got me about that movie was so there's a part where this is basically when things are really starting to pop off. I believe they lose like their cameraman, they lose someone. And they're like, okay, you know what? Forget this. We're going to get out of here. And they go to get out of here, and they open the front door, and the front door is just a brick wall. Like, they open the door, and it's just a brick wall. There's other instances where they, follow an exit sign, but the exit sign just keeps running them through a hallway that doesn't end. So, like, that kind of stuff really gets me because it really kind of, like, it flirts with the eldritch horror stuff, horror of, unknown dimensions and whatnot. But it's really fun to me when you get into the stories of, like, ghosts kind of manipulating human dimensions, manipulating the human mind to either manipulating the dimensions to really be an endless hallway or manipulating the mind to thinking that they're running through an endless hallway. The second one for me is going to be 13 Ghost. 13 Ghost is OG classic as far as I'm concerned when it comes to ghost movies. Probably one of the best ghost movies that has ever been made. And I really liked the story that they told there with like the house that was basically a puzzle box that was a prison for the ghost. And as the story is being told, this house is actually moving and different rooms are appearing and disappearing. We even see that dude get completely sliced in half as a wall, comes down because it's just all a glass house basically. And the ghosts in there are really good because they're dark perversions of the Zodiac is basically what they are. And they all have their own lore, their own background, their own story. I think the Juggernaut was definitely the scariest to me. I believe that's the one that had its head in the cage. That one was pretty creepy. And then number 3 would have to be Ghost Ship. Strictly just because the opening scene, the ghost ship, was absolutely spectacular. The ghost, or spirits manipulating the hook to let go of the metal like wire, and it just flies across the deck of the ship, pretty much decapitating every single person standing on the deck of the ship. And there was like a big party, and it's just really, really good movie.
Yeats, it is your turn. What is your top three favorite paranormal movies?
Okay, I'm just gonna list three. I don't really think they're in particular order. One is Ghostbusters, one specifically. Another is I'm probably gonna I've still been debating, but I'm probably gonna say Hereditary, and then another one. Man, I have so many favorites. I'll just go with The Shining. So the reasons those are my top three, I'll start with Ghostbusters since it's probably the easiest one, is that I feel like it's one of the very it's one of the few ones I find genuinely like funny while still being somewhat scary, because I think not a lot of media uses camp nowadays. So I always go back to that for a little bit of camp, but also because it's actually scary, because be yeah, got okay. Well, basically, if you've seen Ghostbusters 1, it's uh basically you have don't really and I don't want to go in depth through it because I feel like everybody's seen it. I don't just want to recite it. So ghosts start terrorizing the town, and you have, you know what I'm just gonna say. The reason I feel so okay. I'll just work on the Hereditary because that's one I also like. Is because you have it's a ghost story, but you never actually see the ghost, which is something I always like. It's one of the things I like is when the ghost doesn't actually have a physical form and it just possesses people. No, I didn't say it. I'm so sorry. I forget everything. I forgot to say my number one favorite, Evil Dead. I'm just gonna go through that. I skip everything. Evil Dead 1 is, well, 1, 2, not really during the rest of them. I still like them, but they're not per scary. So the reason that I like them so much is because Evil Dead 1 especially, and 2, is that you get to see Ash and his friends go to a cabin, and when they start summoning demons, everybody starts losing their minds. And the thing I like about it so much is that you see the struggle that we talked about earlier with the afterlife, and you can see like him struggle with terms with his friends dying, and that's something that's it doesn't go too deep into, but you see like how he's shook by it, and that's why his progression seems like good in the from each film, is like he's his mind, and he even kind of mild spoilers, just if you don't really want to, is that he eventually gets possessed at one point and then eventually overcomes that. But the fact that like the movies deal with like him and his vulnerability as a human being, the kid compared to the Deadites, is really really emotional, because you see a lot of movies focus on the monsters more. You see a lot of movies focus on the gore, the violence, but you don't really see focus on the protagonist. It's too much, and that's what I like a lot about the Evil Dead. But the key about the Deadites specifically, and why they are good, is that they are just fucking pieces of shit. They will troll you like there's no tomorrow. That's I feel like there's not enough. That's also why I like Ghostbusters, is that there's this bit of silliness. Although Evil Dead does it, I think, better. because while it is still funny, it is more serious, and I think that tone hits me way harder.
All right, so we are going to move on to the next question, which is jumping media from movies to video games. So, Max, what is your favorite video game series involving paranormal or ghost encounters?
For me, strictly talking about ghosts, I'm probably gonna steal the one that everyone says, Silent Hill and Fatal Frame. However, sticking strictly with Fatal Frame, sticking strictly with ghosts, I would say Fatal Frame comes to mind much more. I love the atmosphere, and I love. So with ghosts, a lot of things that we think of is like the big scare, the big spirit dragging you to hell, and like all these different things, pans flying and everything. What I love about those games is that they're willing to be subtle, especially if I was gonna pick favorites, I'd probably say, I know it's like, oh, Crimson Butterfly, oh, Maiden of Blackwater. For me, I would say it's Maiden of Blackwater. That game is chock full of so many different small little details. Like, sure, is it fun to see like a possessed doll like run at you with a knife? Yeah, of course, it's a great time. But it's so much scarier when you're just in a room full of them and one of their heads fall off. And you hear something fall and you freak out and you're like looking around, your spirit camera's out, and it's just a head that fell off. Or like one of their eyes start glowing until you look at them. A painting falls over when you don't expect it. You see a woman hanging and then you realize she isn't there anymore. That game absolutely nails subtle horror. And I would definitely say in terms of in terms of video games, because I feel like a lot of video game things, they feel like they have to jump scare you. For example, another one that would come up, this one might seem a little bit weird, is Five Nights at Freddy's. That game absolutely nails atmosphere. It nails like confusing lore. It nails this nightmarish feeling of being unsafe. But what's the main thing it does to you? Well, it just runs at you and freaks you out. And, there's a giant animatronic that's like 7 feet tall trying to like shake you and shove you into a suit. It's very good at being subtle, but it more creates stress. While Fatal Frame will let that slow burn kick in, specifically Maiden of Blackwater, when it starts raining, even when nothing happens, you know the ghosts are coming. You see an item on the ground and you want to pick it up, but you realize every time you try to pick something up, you know a ghost is going to try to hit you, or when you come through a door, the same kind of thing. Not to mention how it treats Japanese mythology with Shintoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, like all that kind of like references and things. It brings them all together extremely well, especially with the rituals that they have to do to try to keep this other world from coming in. And when it does come in, how it all like culminates and like destroys this village and draws people into it. I just think they are masterclass games in regards of ghosts. I should say that in terms of like just ghosts strictly, Fatal Frame just does an incredibly good job. I would talk about Silent Hill as well, but there are ghosts involved, but I feel like that shouldn't be the focus of my specific video games.
Zamzara, it is your turn. Favorite ghost medium in video games? What's your favorites?
My favorite ghost video game, of course, is going to be a tie between Pac-Man and Luigi's Mansion. No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't even think of Luigi's Mansion. Damn it, that's a good one though. That's actually a really good video game.
It is.
Do it. Son of a gun.
Especially the first one.
That one was banned from multiple countries for being too. Anyway, sorry.
So I'd say it's strictly ghost game. I'd say Visage is probably my favorite ghost game that I've played, at least even in recent memory. It just sticks to, this is a ghost story, and that's all we're going to be talking about is ghosts, where, like we've already discussed multiple times, ghosts kind of have a lot of crossover with demons, and in the case of one of my other favorite kind of paranormal games, Fear, it crosses over into sci-fi a little bit towards the end. It's not strictly like, okay, this is paranormal and that's it. So Visage is probably the top of my list, but I also want to mention Eternal Darkness because that is a game that once again kind of devolves into like a little bit of demon and occult stuff later on in the game. But in the early hours when it's messing with like fake messing with your TV volume, your TV brightness, turning off your system, resetting it, deleting your save files, like it made you feel, if you were playing that at the time on a CRT TV, on a regular GameCube, it made you feel like your technology was getting taken over by something that you didn't have control over. It was what was it? The Mantis fight from Metal Gear Solid, just like an entire game of that though. So it was really great. I really liked Eternal Darkness and what it did at the time, but yeah, if I had to be pressed to stick to just ghost stuff, it probably going to be Visage.
All right, so it is Hollow Heart's turn. Have you gone yet?
No, I haven't. I can go real quick, but I'm gonna have to
Mm.
pop off. I'm getting a migraine.
Okay.
When it comes to ghost games, honestly, one of my favorite games I've ever played was Geist. I don't know if anyone's played it or if anyone remembers it, but it was a GameCube game, and basically the premise of the story was that you were this character who was murdered, or your soul was wrenched from your body. I can't remember the exact mechanics of how he became the spiritual thing, but it was really cool because it had a lot of like possessing mechanics. So like basically a lot of the game was you possessing different characters within the laboratory to gain better access to different areas and progress through the game. That being said, there was a way for them to find out if you were possessing someone, and then that could cause more problems. Plus, you also had other ghost entity like people that were like you that you had to fight against as well. So that was definitely one of my favorite, especially because I just like the whole idea of like creeping up behind someone and possessing them for like 3 minutes kind of thing.
All right, Hollow Heart, give your outro since you're signing off pretty soon, and then we will move on to the next person.
Okay. I'm Hollowheart. You can find me on both YouTube and Twitch at Hollowheart. I stream mostly Minecraft and horror games.
All right, we hope you get better, and we're going to let you outro everything, so you take care of yourself and enjoy yourself. So we're gonna move on to the next person. Yeet, it is your turn.
Favorite horror video games with ghosts.
Mhm.
Let's start off with the obvious one, Resident Evil 7. Next one would have to be, I'm just gonna say Silent Hill as well. I know it. I know you guys already said this, but I do it as well. I mean, it's just too good for me. Third one, I'll just. Actually, I just not of. I'll just go. I'll go with Outlast.
I think
And
RE is, well, the beginning hour is ghosts, but the rest is like mold, virus, stuff like that.
Evelyn.
Yeah, Evelyn she seems like a hallucination from the virus
I
as well.
thought the hallucination stuff was enough to technically. I mean, I could say another game if that's.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll just. Actually, I was gonna say, so on the topic, I'll say Luigi's Mansion 3.
I mean, that does count. And it's
Yeah,
a
it does
paranormal
count.
ghost game.
I just want to say I really like the game. That's probably my favorite in the series. I'll start with Outlast. Outlast has actually is a, you might not think it's kind of iffy paranormal game, because while a lot of it is like based in like quote unquote science, you have like the wall rider. Can I dog it? I'll talk the spoiler warning.
No, we've already talked about spoilers about Outlast on the last podcast, so you're good.
Oh, okay. Then,
It's the Nazis there. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
You could just, you like the wall rider and the fact that like the inmates go insane and like just adds this paranormal feeling. And this is one reason, but the reason I like it the reason I think it does paranormal well is because it draws a fine line between what is like paranormal and what is real. Which I don't really like the second game too much, even though it's arguably more like paranormal and like religious and stuff like that. I feel like the fact that like the first game had kind of an explanation for things, but not exactly everything, but you can get most of the story down was better. I mean, people might argue that like in paranormal stories and like supernatural less is better. But I think that comes down to a personal preference. I think the fact that I was gonna say that there is like a mix between paranormal and like real people makes it even scarier, because it's not like because you have threats that are tangible, that are real, and you have threats that are not tangible, and the mix up between the two always keeps you on edge. As for Silent Hill, I'm just gonna count the town as paranormal ghosts, and Silent Hill 2 is one of my favorite games. I've talked with Ren about this a bit, but one of the reasons I like it so much is that, well, I mean, I don't think it. I think actually does paranormal like we haven't talked about with introspection and not really for. I feel like we needed to talk more about like paranormal in the sense of like not just like actual threats, but like paranormal in the sense of it's of just a force. Because like with Silent Hill, the paranormal is more of a is they don't refer to it as paranormal as much as like they would say like Luigi's Mansion or FNAF or Fatal Frame, because it's paranormal is not really its upfront spectacle. Its spectacle is in its atmosphere and its themes and its characters and its stories.
So we can move on.
Sorry, man.
No, that's fine. I wanted to do my game selection really quickly, and that is Fatal Frame. Fatal Frame's really good for all the paranormal stuff that we have, and kind of going around into these creepy dojos with, you know, bloodstained priestesses, and they're roaming all over the place, and you see faces in the wall and the ceilings. The first one made my skin crawl like a lot, because it is a game where the jump scares are plentiful, and they do them like often. It's like every single second, and they're all good jump scares. No music, all atmosphere, and if there is music, it's creeping in like slowly but surely. That's the one thing that I really like about Fatal Frame. Then we move on to Silent Hill 4: The Room. It's a game full of ghosts, so I feel this is where it makes sense to bring that correlation into the fold and say, hey, there's ghosts everywhere. Everything's a haunting. Your entire apartment can be haunted by will, and they will take it away from you. You'll see things like bloody shoe prints and slippers going to your refrigerator, dead cats in your refrigerator. A lot of painstaking actions go on in that singular room, and it makes you wonder, when is the next haunting and how do you exorcise it, as well as dealing with the antagonist, which I will talk about on the next question. But it's something that I really enjoyed. Creepy, atmospheric. The fact that there were 2 dead children in the game as enemies, and they were twin-headed figures chasing you around, calling out receiver to the protagonist Henry Townsend because he's part of a ritual that is going on in the game. So I really enjoy Silent Hill 4: The Room for what it was. It was a divisive game, but it still homed on those themes rather perfectly, as opposed to some of the others. And you know, the other Silent Hill games in terms of atmosphere and ghosts, they ain't that bad either. Like 2, when they knock down stuff, you think something is possessed or whatever, but it's not. It's all in the mind, and the mind is a scary place, as we said time and time again. So I want to move on to the next question, and that is basically, I skipped this one, but it was favorite ghost villains in media. They could be from video games or movies, and I want Zamzara to go first.
Sure. My favorite ghost villains from movies is actually from the Frighteners. It's 2 ghosts, or a ghost and a living person, and the ghost is the ghost of a serial killer, and his girlfriend is still alive, and those are like the 2 villains of the movie, the 2 antagonists of the movie, and they're just very interesting characters to watch wreak this mayhem. And like I said, it's kind of a layered onion that, as the movie goes on, keeps getting peeled back more and more. But they're really well done, really well written, and well acted. You believe them to be psychopaths after they kind of let down their mask. It's really cool. And both the ghost and the living girlfriend have a mask that they're keeping up for different reasons. And when those come down, they just are completely unhinged, and it's really, really fun to watch. And other than that, Gentleman Ghost from DC Comics, I really like. He's just a thief, not really violent. Sometimes he's an actual ghost, sometimes he's a person pretending to be a ghost. But he's just a really funny written character, and I really enjoy him as a character. When it comes to video games, I don't really have any favorite ghost villains per se, so I'll just leave it at those 2.
Okay, fair enough. Max, it's your turn.
Lost the mute button for a second there. For me specifically, talking villains, I suspect when you mention Silent Hill 4, you're specifically talking about Walter, so I will not talk about him whatsoever. I just want to mention The Room again, because is it a villain? No, but the reason I love The Room, like in Silent Hill 4, like not just the whole game, specifically your apartment that you're stuck in. Because in ways, at first it feels like a place of safety, but as the game goes on, more and more things start getting wrong with it. You start losing health if you can't figure out how to exercise things. It just has so many wonderful ways to just to scare and unsettle you. And I really like that as another aspect of Ghost, that like a place that you see as safe, your home, your family, I guess there really is, your castle. There's no other real way to describe that. Becoming more and more dangerous over time, I think is wonderful. But in terms of direct villains, I'm going to go back to Silent Hill specifically, and I had to look up their names because I'm awful with names. It's Kiri Himuro from Fatal Frame 1, Sai Kurosawa from 2, and Osei Kurosawa from Main of Blackwater. I bunched them all together because they all fulfill a very similar role. General spoilers for Fatal Frame. Each game normally revolves around some kind of ritual that needs to be done in order to keep hell, the underworld, the otherworld, whatever you want to call it, the darkness, the void, the black swamp, all from seeping in. And these rituals, unfortunately, have to involve a pure girl being sacrificed. In the first one, it involves ropes ripping her apart and the ropes being used to hold it back. I'm blanking on the other ritual for Crimson Butterflies. Basically, like twins have to be slain. And for Maid of Blackwater, they have to be put into a box and drowned. Awful, horrible things, but it's just something that's expected in the village because, oh my goodness, if we don't do it, literally hell is going to come through this world. And in each game, something kind of goes wrong, and as a result, the ritual isn't done perfectly. Speaking specifically on the first one, Kiri fell in love, and she was meant to be pure, and even that love in her heart made her impure by the rules of the ritual. Even if we look at it as like, no, that's awful, that's horrible. No, according to the ritual, that was too much. And as a result, her personality was split. One side that wanted to complete the ritual and fulfill her purpose. The other side was just so angry and so hateful towards everything that she couldn't experience love, that she wanted to make everyone else feel that same way. So all sorts of people that came to the village to investigate, or just living their life, right, would disappear and be found with rope marks ripped limb from limb. I mentioned earlier with The Grudge that as much fun as it was seeing an enemy, or if you want to call that an entity, an enemy that doesn't operate on any form of rules, as much as it's fun, it's also kind of unfair, which is what I really liked about the Fatal Frame girls. They all have rules, they all have purposes, they all have areas, they all have a desire. You can understand it, and if you work around them, it helps you to win the game, not just on a mechanical standpoint as a video game, but as like imagine yourself in real life. Why does this girl want to kill me? Oh, it's because she's mad about X. It's no, I'm constantly coming up with new powers, and by the end of the movie, there's like 10 Juons, and they're all of varying different sizes, and it makes no sense, and there's no correlation. They all have very specific rules that like dictate how they operate. And I just really like that about them. Not to mention their design is fun between the rain, the hair, the hands. These are all known well stereotypes, but they are just done extremely well. And I always love it in those games when like the camera starts going black and white and fuzzy and you see them coming slow and you know there's nothing you can do. If they get their hands on you, you're dead. I love the air and the music that comes with them. So yeah, for specific entities, I have to give it to the Fatal Frame girls.
Okay, so I'm gonna go real quick. I thought that I guess I could count him as a ghost, but I mean, Silent Hill 4, Walter Sullivan, I thought he was fantastic for what he was. I know The Room is the main attraction, but I like his lore, backstory, and the fact that yes, he is a murderer who basically took all this pain and suffering out on the world and started to kill all these people like a serial killer, and then after death, where he killed himself, he was under the ritual of holy assumption, which means he was a ghost that came back and started killing more people after the fact to complete his 21 sacrament rule. So I thought the lore behind that was great. I wish though that the acting for the main antagonist and the main protagonist between those two was a little bit more better and illustrated, but still, for what they told us, I liked the tale that they had to offer, and that was great. For another villain that I really liked, just to keep this short, I would say the Ring Girl. I mean, it's super easy, but you know, she's been in everything. Just the long hair and you know, walking around and stuff like that. I'm not sure if it's Ring or Grudge, but whatever. Just that girl alone we've seen in media time and time again, and it's always creepy seeing that long-haired Japanese child like dead, deceased, and the skin is like decayed, walking towards you, and it's not pretty. It's not something that you want to be in the same room with. So it's one of those things where it's like always going to scare you no matter what, because it brings a level of uncertainty to what's going to happen in that situation and what they could do to other people. So that's my like two villains. I'm sure there's a lot more, but those are the two off the top of my head. Yeet, what about you?
Villains. Not too many. I'm trying to think of, but like besides the ones you guys said, which are cool. I'm trying to think of like favorite villains or ghosts. Yeah, I guess the demon from the Exorcist could be yeah, I guess
I mean, it's
mostly
possession,
because
so
of
if you want to limit it down to possession to make it easy, that's fine.
yeah, I'll just go with that. Go with that because it's just batshit insane, and that's I mean that's all you need to that's all you need to do at the end of the day to be a good ghost. Probably just to be insane. That's why uh that's why a lot of movie monsters get popular. But I also like it because it was like one of my one of the first times I personally saw like extreme demons, because typically everything before that for me was like pretty tame and not really head turning and uh and very Like that gets scary. I mean, nowadays nothing really scares me, but back when I watched it for the first time, it was.
All right.
And I think I actually might have to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to dip. That's okay with you guys.
That's fine. Do you have any social media you want to plug?
No, actually.
Okay.
I wish. I'll just say that it was nice having my first time. I'm sorry if people watching this on YouTube. I'm sorry, I just fumbled over a bit too much.
No, it's all good, man. Everyone's first podcast is always a rough time. It's all fine.
Next time I'll just try to be a bit more concise with what I say. And after that, I'm gonna go play the Shadows of Rose DLC and see how that turns out. Hope you guys have a good day.
You too, man. See you later. So we're gonna move on to the next question here. Let me see. Where am I now? Okay, number 7. So, have you seen any ghost hunters before? People who actively chase after paranormal entities. What are your thoughts on their profession? Zamzara, I want you to go first.
I think it's fun. It's a little bit silly, but it's fun. Being a skeptic, I don't really believe they're finding anything, but it's cool to, if you could suspend disbelief a little bit, it's good entertainment. And if they're doing it on like Ghost Hunters on Discovery, and they're just doing it to make a show, I think it's entertainment. If there were people out there doing it in real life and kind of preying on these people that maybe believe this stuff for real, and these people are seeking closure or in a bad way, and these ghost hunters would be preying on, I would see it as these people preying on them for profit, preying on them being just maybe if they're trying to find some closure to a family death, or just figuring out what is going on in their house or something. It just doesn't seem right. But when it's done for entertainment purposes, I think it's really fun. I watched a ton of ghost hunter shows growing up in my teenage years, and just the stories that are behind that, I think, is the most fascinating part. The stories that get told, oh, there was a lady we see a lady in the white dress, and that could be, this person from way back in the day, and this is why she might be still around, and all that story behind it, I think, is the most interesting part, not necessarily finding, a rocking chair moving or a door closing. Like, that's all fine, but I think the history behind it is kind of the most interesting part of those ghost hunter shows, and keeping that history alive through something like that, I think, is good, because it makes it more consumable, more digestible, and definitely more interesting than just hearing a history lecture about some town or some house or some family. When you can tie like a paranormal aspect to it, it definitely makes it more fun to listen to and learn about. So yeah, I think it's all good and it's all fun in most contexts, but there are some contexts where I'm just kind of like, I don't know about that one. That feels a little bit predatory on those people that might believe that. But overall, yeah, I think it's fun.
All right, so I want to go real quick. I do like what Zanzara said, where it's more of a hands-on experience as opposed to the documentaries that I see where it's like, well, this guy, I know people love their true crime stories, but this guy went insane and this house is haunted for X, Y, and Z, and he chopped up his family and stuff like that. So it's more intimate when the people are there investigating what exactly happened, where is the area of crime and violence, and what took place in here. And when people start to get readings and say, I don't feel like something's right being in this area, I'm getting hairs on my neck, that's when you see the real tension. I applaud people who have bigger balls than me going into places like this and saying, hey, we're gonna camp out here in the middle of the cold night, not knowing what is going on through these like night vision cameras, and we're gonna see if we find a sighting. Again, it's just giving more context to the story, giving more hands-on to what happened here, and people explaining like, this is actually it feels and it is described as some really fucked up shit. So you really get in the thick of things when you know all this information, and that's one thing that I like about ghost hunters and paranormal investigators getting into there and finding readings too. I like the people that bring their machines as well, and they might see it spike up a little bit with ghost activity. That's pretty cool to see as well. So Max, what is your opinion on paranormal investigators?
So for me, I know at the beginning of the podcast, I was like, yeah, porn is real out there. It's out there. No, paranormal happenings. I was like, yes, I believe that they are real. Ghost hunter shows, I'm kind of the opposite on, because speaking for myself personally, if you get me like, I don't know what's a good word for it, but like when you hype yourself up to be scared so that you're ready to be scared, and then lo and behold, you're scared. That's what I feel like a lot of those shows are. I want to agree with Zamzar 100%. The story, the history, those bits are interesting. That I find fascinating. Like the someone will have to remind me on the specifics, but there was some graveyard that it was sinking slowly, and as it sunk, they put more coffins on top of it, and it's like one of the most haunted graveyards ever. That's fascinating. That I find interesting. But for the ghost hunter shows that I have watched, seeing people with like shaky cameras and the Outlast style lighting, and they're holding those radios, I can see why people enjoy it. Just definitely not for me, because sometimes it feels like people are hyping themselves up to be scared, and then they get scared by something that's like, that was literally just the wind. We left the door open and it made the rocking chair move. Not me trying to like poo on it too hard, but not personally my thing as much, other than the history of each area.
Yeah, I definitely agree when it's just a point of, I still like it, but there are going to be those people where it's like you could tell it's fake, and like it's like a Scooby-Doo thing. Like they go in there, oh, we're super excited guys to have our first ghost encounter, and it's gonna be really awesome, and we're gonna be grilling hot dogs. Yeah, when it's too much optimism, that's when I don't buy it. But when it's like actual, we're sitting here telling this entire diatribe of what happened, and we're really feeling ill, and then we need to get out of here. That's when it's a bit concerning for the crew, and that's when I really start to get into it from there. But when it's fake, I definitely agree with that too. It's like, oh golly gee, we're gonna catch a ghost. Yeah, that's when I'm totally out of it. So I resonate with that.
That's when you need the old Catholic preacher man who's like seen some shit. That's when you bring him in and things get a little more.
Oh yeah, the stereotype. It's like, I've seen some shit. By God,
I have seen 3 children move their heads and puke. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, amen, brother. I'm not even Catholic, but I support this.
Yeah, I like that a lot when they just have that old guy that is sort of the veteran, and you have all the young kids that don't know shit. That's pretty cool.
Start speaking Latin and you're like, shit's going down.
But we're gonna move on to the final 2 questions here. So number 8, what is your general thought on possession, people who might be under control of a ghastly spirit? So Max, I want you to go first.
Well, as I talked about in the beginning, in the Bible, that kind of shit happened, and it's horrifying and it's awful, and it's like, it's one of those situations, I'm sure we've all played games or movies or seen movies or things where like a demon goes into someone and they're like, you can't kill me. I'm in your best friend. What you gonna do about it now? And it creates like a really interesting dynamic, which I think, once again, for storytelling, mechanical things, I think is very fun. Or like if a ghost goes into you and is like, I don't have full control, but I can't stop my arm. There's a lot of good fun to be had there. But in terms of real life possession, like, is it possible, or partial possession or anything like that? Yeah, I think it can happen. And I think it's horrifying and awful because they're essentially holding someone captive. So your list of options goes down real fast. And then stories of people who, like, they were possessed, they started like just cutting themselves, ripping themselves apart, just like going mad, essentially. I think it's real, and I think it's incredibly horrifying, which is why it works so well in storytelling mediums.
Samsar, what about you?
I am the exact opposite. I do not believe in any sort of possession or anything along those lines. I have friends who are more religious than myself that have experienced things like that, and they claim it's real. I've never seen anything like that with my own two eyes, so I find it very hard to believe. I think the human mind is a very powerful thing and can make you believe things, that things are happening to you that are not really happening to you. I think there is some sort of real world explanation for possessions or people who believe they are possessed or acting out in some way. And I think there's history to that, where, people are, either mentally unwell, and back, 50, 60, hundreds of years ago, they had no explanation. So they just went with, oh, they're possessed. So that's what we're going to go with. And then we're going to, have an exorcism or some sort of ritual to dispel the demon or whatever is inside. So I don't believe in it as a storytelling technique or something in media. I think it's an entertaining concept, but yeah, I don't believe anything like that is possible in the real world. But that's just me being a skeptic.
I am personally, I don't know if I would say I'm in the middle, because again, it is one of those things where someone will say something, they would believe it. Someone will say, oh, I have brain damage, and someone could just be having a headache sometimes. So people would take things, they would take it and they will run a mile with certain things and certain beliefs and things that are happening to them, which everyone has that crazy old man on the lawn, conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat, screaming about fucking seeing aliens every night come to his backyard and piss on his counter. There are people that do that, and it's just like, go to bed or something, please. Go back in the house, grandpa, please. And then it's other things where it's like people play with possession boards and Ouija boards, and I would never personally do it because I don't want to see what goes on with it. I don't want things randomly moving around near me, or ghosts speaking letters and everything. So if I see someone committing a seance or whatever, I'm just going to be like, all right, either I'm burning the board, or I am burning the house, or I am just going to leave and throw the board into the sewer. So one way or the other. But I personally would not get involved with any of that stuff. If it happens to someone, it's just a thing of I feel bad, but at the same time, again, people exaggerate so much information that it just wouldn't even be a big deal if they look into the grand scheme and relax sometimes. So it all is dependent and determinate for me. So we're going to move on to the final question, which is probably the most obvious out of the entire document. Would you ever live in a haunted place for $1 billion? Yes or no? And I want to start with Zamzara.
Yes, 1,000,000% yes. If you're offering me that kind of money, I will definitely spend the night in somewhere that is supposedly haunted. I will stay in the most frightening place ever for $1 billion if you want to set that up.
Oh, Max, it's your turn, buddy.
I feel like this one's safe to be a little bit more of an open discussion between the three of us. When you say live in, for how long?
All right, let me put
and how haunted is it? Like, is this a house I'm gonna walk in and shit's flying and I'm gonna be like, all right, this is what I'm living with today? Or is it just like, I've heard the worst things ever?
For $1 billion, you know what? I think it would be fair to say a month.
To say everything?
Yeah, to live in there a month and you'll get the $1 billion.
Okay, but
a friend ghost in a month.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are things actively flying, or have I just heard the worst things about it?
You heard the worst things about it.
Okay, so we could take The Grudge and be like, you're gonna move into the Grudge house. Basically, there was some horrible series of murders, and you have to live in there for a month, right?
Yes.
See, on one side, we just described the mindset of let's not fuck with supernatural. Because, it's a fourth dimensional thing screwing with us. And I like to think of myself as a good Christian child, but that doesn't mean I want to run around and be like, yeah, I can send demons out like Jesus. I'd rather not play that game if I could help it, but $1 billion. I think
The money is to entice me.
I'm like, even 1 million. That is a life-changing amount of money.
Mhm.
So my first instinct is yes, but I would not bring any of my things. I would not bring any of my family. It would just be me, and I would spend a lot of time eating out in town. And like the moment shit started going down, I'd be like, "Fuck, sorry, nope, I'm out." Like the
You
moment
at least give it a shot.
yeah, like, the moment I see the grudge girl in the mirror, once I'm like, "Nope, house yours." Yep, sorry, my bad. I didn't know. Bye now. Or like the moment there's like possessed anything, like a chair will fall over, I'll just be like, "Oh, that could be a coincidence." It does a flip. Shit, nope, not gonna do it.
I would probably be that guy that would be like, you know what? If shit starts going down, I don't mind being like on the street for like a night or two. You know what I mean? I'll come back in the morning where I think everything is safe in the daytime, and then at night I'm just gone.
Yeah, do I want to deal with a drugged out hobo or the grudge girl? I think I'll take the drugged out hobo.
I mean, at least if he's nice, you know what I mean. You got like a couple of dollars to spare. He'll fuck off if you like give him a sandwich. This is like some next level shit in this house. So,
But if it's not the grudge girl, Samjar, you're right. I could make friends with someone in a month. It's just a month.
Yeah, like you could be
We can
friends.
talk to her. Yeah, like hey,
If they're
let's
throwing stuff
talk.
around, you set up some like dude perfect trick shots for them, keep them entertained.
Oh god, that'd be funny. But I mean, I'm okay. So we talked about this a little bit in like the podcast chat before. I call in the movie either A, being the guy who tries to light the ghost on fire and dies vainly, but just goes down swinging, or B, being the guy who the moment shit starts getting supernatural is just like, nope, fight, I'm out, nope, not gonna deal with it. So yes, I would try, but I'd be real quick to leave.
same here. I would be like, the second that stuff is going down, I'll be like, you know what? I gotta get some fresh air. That's not in the terms of service. That's not in the rules, right? Just get some fresh air for like a few hours, and then clear my head and come back and stay in there, at the front door, in fetal position like a child. So
You're told to live in a haunted house and you just stay in the front yard where you're like, I'm still obeying the rule.
You're just gonna fight club it and stand on the front porch for 30 days.
yeah.
I do it. Yeah. That if that is in the rules, I'm fine with that. I'll live in a tent.
Yeah, if I could test being outside of the premise, but I'm still in like square distance, I am sleeping outside and I'm gonna make some marshmallows. Fuck it.
Your pinky toes in the corner. Wait, can we burn down the house? Does that count?
Like, the realtor.
We
is
need a
gonna come-
lawyer. It's $1 billion.
Does that make the haunting worse though? Because now you just burn down where they're living.
Well, now they got nothing to be angry about. No, it would make it worse. It would make it so worse. They would be extra pissed at you.
Unleash
Then
the
you
Holy
free
Spirit.
them, and then they're no longer tied to just the house. Then they just follow you around.
Oh god. So you're saying we are either the best or the worst people for this challenge?
Probably the worst.
Probably the worst. We would be the best until one pot went flying, and then we would just be like, fuck it, burn it down, and then we'd be the worst after that.
But I think this was great fun discussions and times. So we're gonna end this podcast and do our outros.
I was just gonna say, I'm surprised nobody mentioned Beetlejuice. I just thought about that within like the last 5 minutes. Like, nobody talked about Beetlejuice.
I haven't watched Beetlejuice, and isn't he a demon?
Well, no. He is undead, and he tries to sort of help the family. Basically, long story short, two of these couples, they're both dead, and a new pair of family, they move into the house, and now the dead couple is trying to figure out a way to get them out of there. So they call on Beetlejuice to teach them how to be scary, and it all is a crazy movie. I will recommend watching it because it is so fucking funny. Especially the scene where he first appears. Michael Keaton just like chews the scenery in this movie. He's so great.
I've seen like one scene from it, and correct me if this isn't from Beetlejuice, but it's like they possess an entire dinner of people. And
Yes,
they're all
they do.
doing like a dance in sync. I remember watching that being like, that's hilarious. That's horrifying.
Uh-huh.
was, like,
It toes
hand
the
in
line
hand.
really good. Yeah, it
Yeah.
just toes that line between this is terrifying, but also the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Because like being puppeteered by something else to do a song and dance routine. Oh, it's just a song and dance routine. Oh, I'm gonna be thrown out of a building in about 10 seconds. Oh, this is gonna be good.
The great thing about that scene in particular is number one, you see the horror on their face where they are moving by themselves. They know that something's wrong, and their eyes are like popped out of their head, which is entertaining. And then you get the eccentric people who are just like people in real life who would say, "Oh, that's great. I want more of that. Can we turn this into a tourist attraction, please?"
Oh,
And I'm just like, no, that's like the wrong thing. You don't want to do that because you're gonna aggravate the spirits even more.
When I mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's earlier, where it's like, oh, the premise of 3, it's like, yeah, we collected all this haunted paraphernalia and we're gonna make it a ride. It's like, yes, this is what you do. This will go well. Nothing will happen.
I like
You're
that.
asking for it.
I like that movie so much because it's a comedy and they do have some ties and it's also eccentric, but there are people like that. There are people that be like, the first thing we're gonna do is try to turn this into a circus and make some money.
Oh god, heck no.
But I definitely would recommend watching it, Max, if you haven't. It's a very good movie.
My movie list gets bigger every single day, just like the video game list, the anime list, the book list.
Mm-hmm.
It never ends. It's like I don't need anything new to come out for like 20 years. I have such a backlog.
But we're gonna do our outros here. A good, pleasant time all around. My name is Renegade Operative. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. You can find me on Twitter at RenOperative_ and Twitch at Renegade_Operative. Zamzara, what is your credentials, buddy?
Yeah, you could find me on YouTube and Twitch. If you just search Zamzara, you'll find me. I got Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all that fun stuff. If you search Zamzara on those, you should be able to find me. The username may be a slight variation, but pretty easy to track down.
Max?
Well, my name is Max, also known as Lord Ectro. I'm a variety streamer on Twitch. We're currently going through the Fatal Frame franchise, and we're about to do the closed beta for Outlast, Metal Gear Survive, and doing the Metroid franchise, which I'm pretty excited about. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, all as Lord Ectro. And yeah, thanks for having me. I feel a little out of depth because I kept bringing demon stuff in, but this talking specifically about ghosts is a very good time, and I'm very happy that I started Fatal Frame right as we were doing this podcast because it really got me into the spirit of it.
Oh yeah, no problem. I think a full-blown demon discussion is coming, as well as aliens and whatever else I could pull out of the subgenre that people like, you know what I mean? It's always a good time, to break that up and see what we could do with it. But this was fun. I had fun. I had a good time, and I have to tell the people out there in YouTube land that we are signing off. So hopefully you really enjoyed this podcast, and once again, take care of yourselves. Don't get possessed. See you later.